Hello everyone, welcome to Inside Implant Studio, part 1, a new series of webinars all around Implant Studio on what you need to know to use it in your daily work. With me is my co-worker Thomas.
Hello everybody.
My name is Birk Blönix. I'm the responsible product and business development manager for implantology within 3Shape. Thomas.
I work alongside Birk with mainly on the technical product management side, so on the actual development of our implantology solution, and very much centered around Implant Studio, obviously.
So, as said, welcome to the first part of a new series of webinar we're going to run all around Implant Studio and what you should know or you might need to know in order to be successful in your daily work. Today's session is going to be limited down to not more than 30 minutes. As always with our webinars, we like to give you a chance to ask questions while we move forward. Please consider the whole event as interactive. You can ask questions if you type it into the question part. We also have a handout at the end of the session about how to use the dual scan protocol. And well, then let's get started.
Yeah, let's look at it. So, Birk quickly mentioned these new webinar series that we're running where we really want to try and share some tips and tricks coming in from users to users. So that's the whole idea of this live series. We want to distribute knowledge, both what we have internally and what we're working on and why we develop the things we do, but also we get a lot of feedback from users all over the world that we want to share. That's what we're going to do today here, where we're going to look very much on the practical side of being successful with the dual CT scan protocol. So we're going to look at a little bit an introduction to the protocol as a concept, and then we're going to talk about preparing for the smooth working experience. Then next time we have a scheduled webinar for 3rd of May, where we will look into the software side of things and using the dual scan protocol with Implant Studio. So I think we just jump straight into it.
Yeah, I think the first fair question to ask is actually what is the dual scan protocol and how it distinguishes itself from a surface scan or the normal scan protocol we're using in Implant Studio based on a 3 scan. Maybe Thomas, you can go ahead and tell us more about it.
Yeah, I'll try, and I prepared a slide kind of illustrating the two different protocols we have available in Implant Studio today, where on the right hand side we see the protocol, the workflow we use for designing kites that are tooth retained or tooth supported, where we use scan data from a CT scanner of the patient and we make an intraoral or a model surface scan and combine the two scan data sets. On the left hand side on this slide, we actually see what we're going to talk about in this webinar. On the next one, that's the input data for the dual CT scan protocol. So here we actually are talking about two different CT scan data sets. So one of the patient wearing a denture or an appliance, and then one of the appliance itself. So even though they might look a little bit similar when we just look at the data, then we always have to keep in mind that the scan source and scan origin in the two workflows are different. So that's kind of the main difference of the two.
Good. So now we understand what is the main differentiator to the normal protocol using an intraoral scan or an impression from a patient. So let's discuss the pros and cons for the dual scan protocol. Why people are using it, still using it.
Yeah, and before we just move into that, I just quickly want to mention that the dual scan protocol is not something that we have come up with. It's kind of become the golden standard for guided or computer guided implantology for edentulous cases, which is also very much what we use it for. And that kind of leaves us into the pro and cons decision. I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on it today, here and now, because we want to move on to the practical side of things. But the pros and cons depend a little bit who you are, how you're used to working. But you can say that One of the pros for a lot of users is that we don't need a surface scan source, so we don't need an intraoral scanner or a model scan. We only work with the scans coming out of a CT scanner. It's a well-established and documented workflow within both academic studies and case studies throughout the entire world. It's easily reproducible. It's prosthetic driven, since we have the ability to use an existing denture or setup in the workflow and use that for implant planning. And it's very easy to get from guide or from appliance to actual guide, and the turnover there doesn't require a lot of software skills or so that's some of the pros. Looking at the cons, then you can say obviously the accuracy of CT scans is not always as accurate as we would want them to be, and also comparing them to trios intraoral scans or to scans of stone models, the CT scan accuracy can be challenged quite easily there. There's some manual work involved in the workflow, which is time-consuming, refitting of dentures, making sure they fit before we actually can even start the workflow, which, I mean, costs time in the practice. And then obviously there's this whole thing about a CT scanner being a quite complex piece of hardware and a quite complex piece of software, so you kind of need to know your way around your CT scanning configuration enabled to make sure you have the right setup. And any inaccuracy in a CT scan is, or in the manual process in the workflow, will be carried all the way through the workflow to the resulting guide, which is also, we don't really have any options to go in and correct it a whole lot if we've captured something we didn't want.
Thank you, Thomas. So we understand a little bit better why people are using the dual scan protocol. I mean, it's a gold standard and it's easy to use if you have only a CBCT available. But we also understood it's really important to take care of calibrated and maintained CT scanner, because CT scan inputs, as much as the denture, the quality of the denture we're going to use here is going to define the fitting of the guide. So let's move on to how to do it on a practical way. Maybe you have you can share a few inputs here with us.
Yeah, sure. So first, I think we should just take a look at what is actually involved in this workflow. Which ingredients do we need, so to say? Obviously, we need a patient, and this patient should have a removable appliance of some sort, or we should make a removable appliance if the patient does not already have one. We need some chairside reline material. We need some CT scan markers to put markers on the actual appliance or denture. We need to fabricate a bite registration index. And obviously we need a CT scanner, cone beam or regular medical.
Yes, in some market this is also known as a DVT, different names for the same device. So these are the main ingredients. So how are we going to use them to prepare the denture for CT scanning?
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. The first thing that we need to consider is the fabrication of this bite index. The whole purpose of having a bite index is really to make sure that we have a good, stable relation between the appliance or the denture and the antagonist. So these are preferably manufactured or produced in the clinic with just injecting some elastomeric material onto the occlusion of the patient, and then ask the patient to bite and wait for the material to set. So silicone or something similar. The prosthesis reline, we've touched upon it a little bit already. It's necessary if the existing denture or appliance is not fitting very well. Any unfit of a denture of an appliance will carry all the way through to the guide. So it's really important that we make sure that we refit the denture before we scan it. Here we hear different feedback, but both hard reline materials that are easily showing up on CT scanners can be used, and we even heard some users using soft reline materials, but we expect that those users are using some very fine configurations on the CT scanners to be able to do that.
This is also an input we got from Sek. Thank you for that. So using soft reliant materials can work, assuming that the denture is placed correctly in a CT scan.
Yeah, and the hard thing about the soft reliant material is that if the density of the material is too low or not, the difference between densities is not big enough, then it will be hard to recognize it on the actual scan.
Here we're going to show it also to you next week during the software demo. We have a feature built into the software called threshold adjustment for the denture. This can give you the flexibility you need to find the right edge between the denture and air. But as Thomas pointed out, assuming the assumption is that the actual soft reliant material is not too far away in hardness from the actual denture material.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to the next thing we need to do in our preparation prior to CT scanning, if the existing appliance denture contains a metal frame or any metal in any of its parts, then we need to make an acrylic copy of this denture. We cannot have any material, any metal in the denture that we want to scan. This will ruin the scan, and we will see a lot of metal artifact in the CT scanner. So we really stress that if you can make a copy in an acrylic, hard acrylic material, there's no way around it. The last thing that we need to consider is how to mark the denture with CT markers before we scan it. And here we hear good feedback on two methods primarily. So some users are using these sticky markers that are prefabricated, which are shown here on the screen. They're just a sticker basically with a little solid sphere with in a material that very easily shows up on the CT scan.
Do you recall the name of the manufacturer by any chance?
I believe the ones that we have had hands-on and made tests with and also had users making tests with are manufactured by a company called SureMark. We don't have anything to do with them, but it seems to be a really good solution, and we hear really good feedback.
Yeah, and it's very nicely visible in the CT scans once you import the scan into Implant Studio. This is what we definitely can share with you.
And they also seem to not cause a whole lot of scatter and a whole lot of artifacts, which is very important. So they seem like a really good alternative. The other solution is the normal solution, or what we should say, where you can make small dents with a round-headed drill into the denture and then fill the dents up with gutta perca, and in that way create your own marker. And that's what we see in the picture on this slide.
Maybe a few words on how you should place the markers on the denture.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. That we obviously want some kind of distribution of the markers, and we obviously also want a rule of thumb for how many markers to place. And you probably shouldn't go lower than 4. And if we don't want, or we don't want to place too many either. So somewhere between 4 and 7, 8 is probably a good number that you distribute both across the palatal area, the buccal lingual sides of the existing denture. As we see on this picture, there's 3 markers distributed across the palate, and then we have some markers on the buccal side as well.
Good. Perfect. So now the next step is to take the scans. So how are we going to do that?
Yeah, so taking the scans is also, we have some user feedback and input here we want to share, and it comes from both very experienced users but also users that are just getting started with this protocol. And what we hear from both user groups is that you always want to scan the denture first. You want to make sure that you can get a good denture scan with your prepared denture with markers, and then you can scan the patient afterwards. So before we move on to talking about scanning patients, let's just go through the checklist of scanning the appliance or the denture. First, we need to place the denture in the center of the field of view. Most CT scanners have functionalities that can help you do this.
For instance, using the laser markers, some of the CTs have, or using the scalp mode.
Exactly. So there's different, depending on the system, there's different indications of how you can do this, but it's quite important that we get it right. When we scan the denture, always position the denture as it was, or as it will be positioned in the patient's mouth. So as shown here, it should always be facing and resting on in the actual field of view as it was placed in the patient's mouth. Some CT scanners comes with these stands or holes for this workflow specifically, and some don't. The ones that don't, we hear a lot of good feedback about using a styrofoam block to kind of raise your denture into the center of field of view and then place it on this styrofoam block. It's a material that has a significantly different density than the denture, so it will not influence the actual scan of the denture if we capture any of the styrofoam. Then we can go ahead and scan the denture when we've checked off those things. As soon as we have that, we should always verify the quality of the scan. Do we see the markers? Do we see the outline of the denture clearly? And do we see any scatter? If all of that is good, then we can move on and scan the patient. Scanning the patient is not very different from that what we normally see people do. So place the appliance and the bite index that we manufactured in the patient's mouth before the scanning, and make sure that it's in its correct position, and then apply your normal best practice CT scan procedure. So again, it depends a little bit on what CT system you're using. Again, and especially for the first couple of cases you do, it's super critical that when you have done the scan, you quickly evaluate and verify if the scan is good enough, so we don't send the patient back home without making sure that we actually have the data that we need. And for the whole scanning of things, if you're a new user, then we obviously recommend that you make a couple of test runs, especially on the denture scan, where we don't have to be worried about radiation of patients and stuff like that, because getting the denture scan right is going to be so critical to getting a very nice guide out of this workflow. So play around with it and make sure you have the right settings before you go live, so to say.
So actually, thank you very much, Thomas. So there's a lot of information. Maybe just to summarize it, when doing the CT scanning, first always start with the denture scan. Make sure it sits in the right spot, in the right position, is on a stable platform, either by the original kind of device delivered by the CT manufacturer, or use Styrofoam. If you use Styrofoam, make sure it sits stable. And if you, after scanning the denture, make sure the image quality looks good. You can see all the things you need to see, including the whole denture and the markers. You move on to the patient. You place the denture in the mouth of the patient using the bite index. You scan the patient as normal. Take a full volume scan. Depends on what the full volume scan is on your CBCT. Typically around 15 or 16 centimeters multiplied by 10 or 8. In that range. And then we have all the data we need to move on to the practical part of using this data in Implant Studio software. We're going to talk about this next week. But before this, maybe just for you, here we have a document we like to share with you. It's actually summarized what we just presented in a step-by-step instruction on how to do it. There's a quote by Zachary Dalmau, saying that preparation is key to run this protocol successful. We can only emphasize it. It's a key element for this specific workflow. So once this is taken care, the rest will be much easier and much better and to deliver high quality results for the fitting of the guide, but also for the fitting of the prosthetics. So
we're going to send this document around to you in the email after this webinar. If you're an end user and you want access to this document down the road and you misplaced the one you receive now, then please contact your reseller and they can deliver it to you guys.
Excellent. So that's it for today. Actually went pretty fast, but as shorter as better, as we sometimes say. So please do not forget to sign up and participate next week, Tuesday, May 3rd, for the second part of webinar on how to run the dual scan protocol successfully in using Implant Studio. we have a nice case prepared which we like to share with you. Until then, have a good remaining week and good luck.